And in this service, the question was asked, is there anyone here that's never surrendered their heart and life to Jesus Christ? And I knew in that very moment what was missing in my life. You see, I had been successful, but I was unfulfilled. Did I love the roar of the crowd? Absolutely. Can't lie to you about that. But at the end of the night, the cheers would stop, the applause would stop, and have to look forward all over again the next day. But on that morning, 17 October 1992, I walked an aisle and I bowed the knee to the real champion for the world, Jesus Christ. And my life has never, ever been the same since. It's been a phenomenal journey. Thank you.
We all have gone down different paths to get to where we are now. And mine started, everybody seen the movie Rocky? The first version of Rocky? Well, that's where I grew up for the first 13 years of my life. I've seen more as a 13-year-old and did more bad things than you could do as a kid. And I was headed in the wrong direction. And watched one of my best friends at 12 years old stab his mom 13 times. And see a lot of things I don't talk about, and I've never really talked about. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've mentioned anything to anyone of you guys. Until, moved to Minnesota and got into the wrestling business and all that stuff. And as I got older, I wasn't the kind of guy who was going to start a fight. I would dang well make sure the fight ended. And I was going to be the guy to finish it. And then one day, I got into the wrestling business, and Nikita was on the card. And so I was wrestling a guy named Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. And yeah, I know. Great second generation wrestler. And I'm in the ring, and I grab the microphone, I get in the ring. Kurt Hennig, get in here, and I'm going to kick you. And I didn't say what. Okay. Did the wrestling match. Whole match went on. Night one, shower, got the next day, do the same thing. We're in a beautiful part where we Albuquerque, New next door, something like that. So here I am, a lot like today, painted up, got the shoulder pads, spikes on, wait for this match to end. And, I used to like to watch the matches ahead of me because you never stop learning in our job. You learn every day you're in the wrestling business. If you don't, you might as well quit. And I'm watching the first match, and I'm not on to like semi-main or main event. And Nikita gives me this book called Breaking the Chains, Guide to Christian Living. He's, I'll be honest, he's given it to me before, and I just kind of tossed it in my bag and don't even remember what the first copy was. He gave it to me again that night. I went and did the same thing, and I went to throw my bag, and I go, I'm not kidding. For some reason, I didn't throw the book in my bag. I sat there, painted up, with my spike shoulder pads on. I read that book from front to back. Now, what hooked me in the book, I'll be honest, in the flesh, right there in the beginning, he says, I want to thank my friend Joe Lord. I was thinking, all right, this is not me. All right. When I read the book, I went and I got done. Wow, I looked at it and thanks. Went to the ring, grabbed the microphone again. Mr. Perfect, get in here. Now I said, I'm going to kick your butt. For whatever reason, my verbiage changed. I'm going, man, what's going on here, right? So now I feel something's going on, but I don't know what that tingling feeling is yet. I'm on the way to the airport, and I get a phone call from Chris Chavis, Tatanka. Everybody know what Tatanka is? He called me just to tell me that he is born again, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm going, what in the world is going on? First, the key gives me his book. I changed my verbiage. Now Chris Chavis is telling me this. I'm saying something's going on here. So I went home. After I usually do a flight, I like going to the gym to work out. All of us here in trade is where you get what we call the pump. You get your best work and everything else. I told my wife at the time, I said, man, drop me out here. I need to go clear my head and go to the gym. So I get in there, start doing a few sets. I go to the water fountain, I get a drink. I get a drink of water. I turn around. Has anybody ever seen the Christian Power Team? There's 6 guys, 300 pounds in my gym. First guy, big Russ, looks at me and says, Adam, you got Jesus in your life? I said, man, I don't know what the heck's going on, but I think something's happening right now. They invited me to an event that night at Living Word Christian Center. Ted has been there. He's been there a bunch of times. With a power team to do an event. This guy, Big Steve, called Big Glory, right? Invites me now. He saves me a seat. And he says, just come to the event, Adam. Just bring your family. It's good. big wrestling fans. So I go. He goes, I saved your seat. So I go and walk up. The place is packed with about 7,000 people. I'm looking around, there's no seats except at the very front row. I'm thinking in the flesh big time, I'm going, oh no. Am I going to be a hypocritical Christian guy? I don't want to be one of these guys that I'll say his name like Jake Roberts, who says, I'm born again, and then the next month you're getting busted for cocaine and not being a good role model. I didn't want to be that guy because I had kids. I had 3 little kids at the time. So as I'm sitting there and I'm looking at TV and I can see the camera filming from behind because they were filming the event, and there's 3 big 12-foot screens, and all I see is my big fat head with the mohawk on the screen. I'm going, oh no, who is watching this? I'm at a Christian event. I'm going, am I here? Should I be here? Why am I here? Then there came time where I called where the carpet meets the road for the altar call. And I'm standing there and I'm going, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be a hypocrite. And I should have known all the time it was the Holy Spirit talking about it. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. And I'm feeling pulled into the altar call. My son James is about 12 years old at the time. He grabs my hand and says, Daddy, let's go. And we walked out. The single most greatest important moment of my life was when I gave the heart up to the Lord. It's the greatest time, man. I finally, that little demon that was on my back, you know, everybody's got that little person that taps your shoulder. Now here I was, one of the baddest guys in my business, and it broke down my walls to love it. And I've been trying to sow seed ever since. So that's what I'm saying. One more thing, Lex, before you go. To top it all off, I got baptized by these 2 gentlemen right here. Yeah.
Well, we came here for road stories, but now we're hearing the real story. That's why I drove here with severe backspasm. Not to make a hero story out of this, but 6 hours ago from North Carolina to be here with you all. Was this just about a minute or 2 I get to speak to you all, and how thankful I am to be here with these guys to be able to speak to you. My story. I grew up totally unchurched, and I was a pleasure seeker for 47 years. I thought my purpose here in life was to get all I can, buy all I can, consume all I can, do all I can, make all the money I can. There's a verse in the Bible that I've learned since then. What shall profit a man to gain the whole world but to lose his soul? That was the description of my life until age 47 back in 06. And everything was cheering me and total package, making tens of millions of dollars, and thought I had the life, but there was an emptiness to me. And I kept on trying other pleasures to try to find why am I here? What's my true purpose or meaning? And Solomon, the wisest, wealthiest man in the world, called it chasing after the wind. That was me. I tried it. I didn't work through money or career. I tried it with just really negative things like partying and drinking and drugs and women. And I gave up my family. I gave up everything that really meant something to me. And my life was behind the scenes what people without realizing had become a total train wreck. And the last time I was in jail, deservedly so, back in 06, I'm at a jail chaplain who decided to chase after me, and I got out on bail. And he ended up becoming a friend of mine. He ended up 3 months later sharing the gospel with me in a hotel room. And it was my road to Damascus moment. I can't explain it. How or why I would be probably the least likely person that my life ever thought would become a born-again believer. I'm so thankful that God placed that man in my life in a hotel room I was at a point in my life where Jesus took the wheel. And I surrendered to Christ. And like Nikita said, I couldn't even put it into words right here, right now. I could talk on forever, but the supernatural changes that God has done in my life, and the people He's put in my life, and the hedge of protection He's put around me in my life, and the disciplers and the godly men who have taught me biblical principles to apply to my life, to turn around my life from a godless pleasure seeker into a man seeking God's heart. And wanting to honor and glorify God with my life from here on out. Now I know my purpose. It's to love and honor God, seek after Him with my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love thy neighbor, meaning we're here for all our gifts to serve others and love our neighbors. That's why we're here. And I'm so glad for that moment back on April 23rd of 06.
I was raised, as I shared with you, by a stepfather that came into my life when I was 5 years old. Married my mother. Mike Dibiase was a tremendous role model. He was a good man. I saw that he loved my mom. I saw that he loved me. He shared that love with me. And I know as a minister today, countless numbers of men that I've spoken to in just so many places, the lack of fathers and what an important role a father plays. A father's supposed to be, before he's anything else, the priest of his home. And I got a break. Because at the age of 5 is one for me in my life. The other thing is he took me to church. And so I did go to church when I had a very strong, what I call childlike faith. And when I first got tested was when I was 15, when he suddenly dies of a heart attack in the ring during a match. And I lived in a small town in Arizona. And this is where I had to finish high school. Wilcox, Arizona has 3 traffic lights. It's a very small town. I watched my parents get alcoholism and all the peer pressure and all those things. But because of my faith in God and because of the role model that my dad had been, I stayed true to my conviction. I spent a lot of nights crying out to God in the cemetery. And I ended up being the first kid ever kind of came out of this little school in Southern Arizona with full scholarship to play college football. But when I got to college, everything changed. I wasn't fearful anymore. I had this new self-confidence, and basically the pride of life took over. The Bible said very clearly, pride goes before the fall. For the next 20 years, my pride, my ego controlled my life. My first marriage failed after 6 years. By the time I was 26 years old, I had failed completely college by 1 year. And I had been divorced, and so I had failed as a husband. I was failing as a father. I had a son who came out of that marriage, and because of the divorce and the fact that I was now a wrestler, I couldn't be with him except on weekends and special occasions. But what was really God in my life was wrestling. And it's as if God said to me, go ahead, look at all the things you think you want. You go climb that material ladder of success. You go become that big finish wrestler you want to be. And somewhere down the road, you and I are going to have another discussion about this. I tell folks all the time, when our kids become teenagers, I know that, it's kind of like they think we're stupid. All of a sudden, we're not hip and we're not cool, and you just want to shake them and go, you little moron. I've only got 20 or 30 years of life experience on you. They don't realize that we give them boundaries and rules because we've been down the road and we're just trying to protect them. Yet if you take that up a notch, our Heavenly Father says, I've only been around forever, for eternity. And He's given us He's given us His Word, He's given us His Son. He said, just follow spite of all those blessings in my life, you know, there's still this void. And I began to attend church again with my wife. I answered 2 altar calls, invitations to accept Christ. And what I tell you is I had head knowledge. I had an intellectual relationship with God. And I tell you right now, the difference between heaven and hell is about 18 inches. It's taking everything you know about God and Jesus Christ and moving it from here to your heart. Because genuine Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. Just because you sleep in the garage doesn't make you a car. Just because you go to church doesn't make you a Christian. You know, like when people would come up to me when I was very young and say to me, "You want to be just like your dad, don't you?" You know, there wasn't a big sign hanging around my neck that said I love my daddy. It just came poured out of my life. But what I understand today is that same attitude of heart that drove me to want to be so much like my earthly father is the same heart I must have for my Savior. Because if that's not my heart, then I'm not a Christian. If it's, you know, if the only way you can tell I'm a Christian is a cross hanging around my neck or a fish emblem on my truck, then I'm not doing what I've been called to do. But it took me a long time to get there. God had to let me go on this journey. And when I went to the WWF, as it was known in 1987, I had just made a rededication of my life to God, so I thought. The pastor lovingly warned me. He said, "You know, Ted, God's planted this seed in your life." And he said, "Now the devil will come quickly to pluck the seed before it has time to take root." And he encouraged me to get in the Word and get into a group of men for accountability. And all of those things were just saying one thing, basically, get into this relationship. And I gave lip service. But in reality, what was still controlling my life was my ego. It was, my God was still my career. And so I succumbed to all the same things, the drugs and the booze and the other women. By the grace of God, I never had an addiction to drugs or alcohol. But God has a perfect timing. And the rug was jerked out from underneath my feet, March of 1992. WrestleMania took place in Indianapolis. The night after that show, I went out on the town in my limousine and 2 beautiful women on each arm, and, you know, just cool, Mr. Cool, making sure I hit all the hot spots. Got a plane to Detroit the next morning and checked into the Marriott Hotel. Walked to a payphone to call home and check in for the next day. But I had a big surprise that morning. So on the other end of the phone was my wife. My wife who had never checked up on me ever, who had trusted me, who had bore 2 children from me, who had accepted my son from a previous marriage. And it was basically holding down the fort, doing everything else, and now discovered that I was committing adultery on multiple occasions. And I said, "I don't want to talk about it, Paul. I'll be able to explain it." She said, "No, you want you to live here anymore." Click, first words out of my mouth. "Oh, God, help me." But there's that height of hypocrisy. The next phone call I made was to a man, my closest friend today. I met Al Santos at the gym in Baton Rouge 12 years earlier, just after I married him. He walked up to me in that gym and simply asked me this question: "Did he know Jesus?" That started a conversation, and it started a relationship, a very one-sided relationship, because doing some of the stuff I was doing, the last person I was going to call was a preacher. But for 12 years, this man of God prayed for me in my darkest hour. I didn't call my pastor at home. My pastor at home was a great guy. But I called a man 500 miles away from one word, relationship. And see, there's that word again. That's what real Christianity is, a relationship. And I realize now, looking back at what I saw in Pastor Hal, was the unconditional love of Christ. Because when he talked to me and he would be with me, he didn't pepper me with religious questions. He simply showed me the love of Christ. And I knew when I called Hal that he would do everything he could to help me. So we arranged for my wife and I to fly to St. Louis. He pastors a church on the Illinois side of the river. And he took me on the longest 3-minute ride of my life to go face my wife who had arrived ahead of me. And I said, "Hal, what do I do?" He said, "Ted, Jesus said the truth that set you free. He never said it'd be easy. He never said it'd be painless. He said it set you free." He said, "If you'll trust Jesus today the way you did when you were 15, dad died and your mom started drinking, he'll forgive you, Ted. He'll restore you. He said, you know what? He never left you. You left him. And all these years he's been trying to draw you back. He said, my prayer for you has been, ever since I met you, I said, God, one day Ted's going to hit the wall. Let me be there for him. Which told me that all this time I hadn't fooled Al either. And then he said something I'd never heard it. I think it's just the timing. He said, remember, Ted, God, that Jesus is both fully God and fully man. And being fully God, he's the God who put every star in the sky you see. He's the God who knew when you take your first breath and when you take your last and everything you do in between. And he's the God who, if you were the only man who ever lived, still would have stepped down out of heaven and died on that cross just for you. In a moment in time, when I looked in the mirror and saw a man that had been willing to put at risk the love and devotion of a committed wife, and had been willing to put at risk the future, the stability, the peace of mind, and the well-being of my own children, for the sake of stroking his ego. It doesn't get any uglier than that. But I try to imagine a God that big that could possibly love me that much. And that was the game changer for me. That's when it went from my head to my heart. That's when I finally hit the wall and said, Lord, I don't ever want to come to this place again. I don't ever want to feel this dirty again as long as I live. You come on board of the ship in Ted's life. You take the helm of the ship, and you take this life wherever you want to go.